Hey guys, Sue's here, back with another Keto Dinner Ideas video. If you're new here, we make these every single week to give you a little motivation to get in the kitchen and get your keto meal prep and cooking on. And we always try to do 4 different recipes each week. So if you're not already a crew member, please hit the subscribe button and join our crew. Let's get into the video. First up this week, we threw together an awesome ground beef cabbage stir fry. So to start with, in a little dish, I have 2 tablespoons of liquid aminos, and I'm adding a tablespoon of sriracha to this and mixing it together. And the original recipe that I'll link down below calls for green onion in this recipe, and I didn't have any, so I decided to add a 1/4 of a teaspoon of granulated onion to my sauce mixture and go ahead and whisk that together. And I'm sticking that to the side, and in a large saute pan over medium heat, I am going ahead and browning a pound of ground beef and just adding a little bit of salt and pepper to that. Now to that, I'm adding 1 package of coleslaw mix. This is a tricolor one, and it does have shaved carrots in it. I don't ever really eat carrots on keto, but for the little bit amount of carbs that this adds to this, I went ahead and went for it, but you do you. You might want to just get a straight cabbage mixture. Now to this, I'm adding some ginger. It's really hard to have fresh ginger grated on hand, and it's hard to find it pre-mixed. So I always buy this kind. It's just sliced ginger. Make sure you check your ingredients because they're always trying to slip extra things and sugars and stuff in there on you. And whenever I get a new jar, I take it all out, run it through my little mini processor, and put it back in the jar, and voila. There you go, a tablespoon of that added to our mixture. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and add that sauce back in as well and stir this around and just cook this still on medium for just a couple more minutes until my cabbage is wilted, still a little crisp, and everything is nice and mixed together. And that is that. Here it is plated up, and because I didn't have any green onion, I did sprinkle little chives on there, really just for picture's sake, but I do like the way they taste as well, and a little bit of sesame seeds. This was awesome. I usually give my husband most of the leftovers, but I think I ate every last spoonful of the leftovers of this. It's great for meal prep. You can jazz it up throughout the week and, add more little bits and pieces of leftover to it. It's a great meal option. Next up, by special request, a couple weeks ago, someone asked for a keto chicken fried steak recipe, and I found a great one by Peace, Love, and Low Carb. So we're making an adaptation of that today. So to start with, we're going to make our sausage gravy. So in a large saute pan over medium heat, I have a couple tablespoons of butter melting. To that, I am adding a pound of ground sausage. Now, anytime you use processed meat, make sure you are checking your carbs because, again, they will squeeze those in on you. And I'm using my handy dandy meat chopper upper, best $5 kitchen tool ever that I always have linked in the description box to break that sausage apart and brown it really well. And once you do, just using a slotted spoon to remove that sausage to a separate container. And then I'm adding some onion. She adds 2/3 a cup of onion. This is really just not that much more than 1/3 of a cup of onion. To that, I added 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, and I'm just cooking those until everything's soft, fragrant. To that, I'm adding 1.5 cups of heavy cream, and just about a tablespoon of dried parsley, 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/4 of a teaspoon of pepper, and I'm just going to whisk this together and bring it up to a boil. And once it's nice and bubbling, I am reducing the heat on that, and I'm going to add my sausage in. Now, this is making a large amount of gravy, and as I said, I added 1 pound of sausage to this. She adds less to hers, so if you want a less thick gravy, then do it that way. But my plan was to use just a little bit of this gravy for our little 4 portions of cube steak we're getting ready to make, and then I'm using the rest of the gravy all week long for breakfast / kind of brunch open-faced chaffle sandwiches with gravy on them. So you do you, but that just worked out really well for us, so you might want to try that too, or if not, you can use less sausage in your gravy mixture. Now to get started on our cube steak, again, I changed all of the measurements and stuff on this recipe and decreased them, so I'm just using 1 egg, and I just eyeballed a splash of cream, whisked that together in a separate shallow dish, a cup of pork rinds, and I really could have used less still, 1/4 of a cup grated Parmesan cheese, teaspoon onion powder, a teaspoon garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon paprika, a little bit of cayenne pepper to give it a tiny bit of spice, and I'm mixing that together there. This was plenty for my 4 pieces of cube steak, and I think I could have even done more with this, definitely. So this worked out for me. But again, check the original recipe if you want to do it the way she did it. She's absolutely keto genius, but I just adapted it for what worked for me and my family. And as I said, normally I would make a lot bigger of a batch of this, but I really didn't want the leftovers hanging around too much because it is very high calorie. But I'm just taking 2 very large pieces of cube steak. I used about a pound of cube steak total for this recipe, and I'm just slicing each of those in half, and I'm going to sprinkle each side with salt and pepper. And to a cast iron skillet, I am adding avocado oil because that's just what I prefer to fry in, but you can add lard or whichever cooking oil you like. And I've just got that heating up over medium-high heat, and I'm going to take my cube steak 1 piece at a time, dip it in my egg and cream mixture, and then dredge it in my pork rind crumb mixture. I know some of you have a hard time finding pork rinds to make pork rind crumbs out of, and you could probably use like flax meal or a combo of flax meal and almond flour for this recipe. And then I'm just going to cook the steak 2 pieces at a time, so I give it lots of room and don't crowd it at all. And I just did maybe 2 to 3 minutes on each side frying it. And then flip it over. And frying the other side. And after that's done, I'm just going to take these and put them onto a paper towel lined plate to let the excess grease drain out. And then I'm going to repeat that process and do the other 2 portions of cube steak. Meanwhile, I went ahead and put some cauliflower rice in the microwave and steamed it, and I'm just going to show you guys how I plated this. So when my cauliflower rice comes out of the microwave, I douse it with a heavy amount of butter and pepper, a little bit of salt, and so I'm just putting some of that cauliflower rice onto my plate, spooning a little bit of the sausage gravy on top, slice of my chicken fried cube steak, and another spoonful of that sausage gravy right on top of that. And then I'm just gonna sprinkle a little bit of dry parsley on top, which you can totally leave out, but it works really well in the photographs. So there you go, guys. That is the chicken fried steak. This is an adaptation of Kyndra Holley over at Peace, Love, and Low Carbs version. And as always, I'll link the original recipe down below if you want to go by that instead. We knocked it out in no time flat. And like I said, the sausage gravy was great to eat on chaffles for lunches throughout the week. Next up, we made a version of Sweet Sea Design's best baked garlic pork tenderloin. So to start with, in a little dish, I put together a tablespoon of minced garlic. I did a teaspoon of dried basil, a teaspoon dried oregano, a teaspoon dried thyme, a teaspoon dried parsley, teaspoon dried sage, and then I'm mixing that all together. It is a little cumbersome with that minced garlic in there, but it's just going to make like a kind of chunky paste that we're going to rub all over our pork. You could just use Italian seasoning in place of doing all of these individual ones. Of course, you can change it up any way you like. Then I'm taking a 2 to 2.5 pound pork tenderloin, and I just have it in a glass baking dish with some nonstick foil, and I'm sprinkling both sides of that with sea salt, washing my hands, and then I'm sprinkling both sides of it with ground black pepper. Now over into a saute pan over medium-high heat. I'm doing a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. I'm just putting my pork tenderloin in there, and I'm gonna sear it for about 3 minutes on each side, flipping it over here. And then I'm also gonna do the very, sides of it that are kind of hard to get there, and just hold them to the pan for a second just so that there's no pink anywhere on it. And then I'm just gonna plop that back into my baking dish. And I did let it rest for a second so that I could touch it with my hands without burning myself. And I'm taking our herb mixture, and I'm just rubbing that all over all sides of the pork tenderloin. Now in a separate dish over here, I have a little bit of cut green beans that were frozen. I thawed these out. I'd say this is probably like 2 cups. I just eyeballed these, and I'm just gonna put those in the tin foil, and we're gonna make this almost like a foil packet. Now I'm getting 4 tablespoons of butter and lining that up on my tenderloin and 1 on each side of my green beans. And I'm just gonna wrap this all together. So pulling the long ends of the tin foil together, I'm kind of folding them so it's almost like tinted at the top. And then just tucking the ends in. I'm gonna pop this whole thing into a 350-degree oven for 40 minutes. And after it comes out, I did let it go ahead and rest for a few minutes, and then I'm using a meat thermometer to check it. Now, the National Pork Board recommends 145-degree temp for porks and chops and stuff. I like mine to be more done than that. I'm just saying. So I did leave it uncovered and pop it back into the oven on 350 still, baking for another 15 minutes after that to bring it to an internal temperature of about 160 to 165. And then after it rested about 10 minutes after I pulled it out, I'm just slicing it on a diagonal. Here it is plated up. I just took my spoon and got some of that juice and poured it over those green beans. This was absolutely delicious, really quick and easy, perfect for a keto weeknight meal. Last up, I threw together a really easy original recipe. I'm just calling this chicken rotel. So to start with, I'm just using this glass measuring cup because it was easy to measure and mix at the same time. I'm adding about a half a cup of sour cream, and then I'm adding a can of Rotel. I did drain the juice out of this, and it's just a tomato and chili mixture. And of course, check your carbs on this, but for servings, this works out just fine. And I'm using a whisk to mix that all together until it's nice and creamy and well combined. And then in an 8x8 glass baking pan, sprayed it with some cooking spray, and I'm taking 2 really huge chicken breasts that I cut in half, and I'm putting those in there, and I am adding salt, pepper, and some dry cumin to each side of my chicken. And I didn't measure this, didn't even measure the cumin, but I'd say it's probably about 1/4 of a teaspoon cumin. And then I'm just pouring that sour cream and Rotel mixture over this. Now, the next time I make this, if I have more time, I was like really rushing with this one, I will probably throw in like a couple ounces of cream cheese because I think that will be even more delicious. But this was super delicious. My husband loved it. Now I'm topping it with that mixture, and then I'm going to use a Fiesta blend of shredded cheese. They call it Fiesta blend. It's like Monterey Jack, cheddar cheese, and then it also has like a little taco seasoning or something added to it. If you're worried about the extra carb that is in this is a cup of cheese, then shred your own cheddar cheese. But I had some of this on hand and opted to use it. So I put about a cup on top, pop the whole thing in a 375 oven for 40 minutes. Here's what it looks like when it comes out. Now to serve this up, I did a steam bag of broccoli and cauliflower because I had one knocking around the freezer that I wanted to use, and I spooned some of the Rotel and sour cream mixture over it. And my husband said it tasted great, but the two things just didn't go together for him. So he ate all of his cauliflower and broccoli with the Rotel on it first, and then ate his chicken separate. Ideally, I would have served this over a bed of cauliflower rice, but because I had already had cauliflower rice this week, I just kind of threw in what I had. But I would definitely recommend doing the cauliflower rice instead of the broccoli and cauliflower chunks. There you go, guys. Super simple, super quick and easy for a keto weeknight meal. That's this week's Keto Dinner Ideas. Next week, we'll be doing an all fish ideas recipe video. That was a special request from a subscriber. Comment down below any special requests you have, and like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and thank you all for your love and support over following us at Susan the Crew on Instagram. Please keep sharing any of our recipes you make and tagging us. And until next time, bye guys.